Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Marc Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Marc helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Marc draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth podcast. This is your host, Marc Bautis. When it comes to our money, we're always thinking about the numbers. But today I brought on a special guest, Anne Beaulieu, to talk about how the emotional side of our money and finances is just as important. Anne is a financial, emotional intelligence coach, speaker, and author who assists us in really understanding what money means to us emotionally so that we can make better money decisions. She's the founder of Femme Sauvage, The Heart of Money Matters, a regular Forbes contributor and the author of 29 books in the Emotionally Intelligent Way series, and brings a unique perspective to something that permeates every area of our lives, money. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marc. Welcome. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for inviting me on your show. Really an honor.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like this topic. I've been in financial services for over 20 years. And it really took me a while to realize how much emotions play into people's decisions about money. So how did you get started into being a financial emotional coach?
It's a long story. I started in finance. I was a finance economist. I was a chartered financial analyst. But if you had asked me, I worked for the government. I worked for companies that had like billions and billions under asset under management. But if you had asked me back then if I was financially literate, I would have said yes. Mm-hmm. But looking back, I was a financial idiot. And the reason, see, we start well. And the reason for that is I let money control me. I did not know how I felt about money. Mm-hmm. If you asked me how I felt, it was like anxious or worried. If I had the money to pay the bill, I was worried. I was anxious. If I didn't have the money to pay the bills, I was anxious. And where that anxiety came from is I did not look at it either. I didn't look at the past. I thought I can just go on with my life and I'll get the diplomas and I'll work, and then if I work hard enough, I'll save some money and all those beliefs had been taught to me as a child. Like I grew up dirt poor at the end of a back road. It's not even paved to this day. Total farmland. Mm-hmm. And so I never looked at all this stuff. And I went on in this career in finance. But money, it exacerbated. It made it worse of how I felt. The more money I had, and I married, and we had it made. Like we had everything under the sun. I had what we call the white picket fence, all of it. Mm-hmm. And I still felt anxious about money. It was never enough. It's even one reason why we divorced, my ex-husband and I, because we couldn't see eye to eye about money. Mm-hmm. It was something that we fought about. And I promised myself I would never be like my parents. I would never fight about money like they did. Mm-hmm. But I did, even though we had it. So I saw both ends of the spectrum. And I realized, holy cow, I need to do something about this. So then I hired a mentor who was more financially, emotionally intelligent than I was. Mm-hmm. And he basically took me by the hand and explained to me how we make decisions. And then it was like light bulb went on and on and on and on. And I became an expert on emotional intelligence. And when I felt confident enough, I brought both fields back in and I became the financial EQ coach I am today. Okay. I eat my own pudding.
No, that's a lot of times that's how it happens. Yeah. But I think what you mentioned how anxious you are about money. Yeah. I'm sure that's a common feeling that people have. And it's probably, it's probably works or comes out differently. Like some people, like you said, they have money, but they probably never feel that there's enough, or they always want more. And then there's probably on the other side, there's people that worry, I don't have enough money, and what do I do? What do I do next? So it probably runs that anxiousness probably runs the gamut of people.
And people don't understand. I didn't understand it back then either. Like, I was raised, keep your feelings out of business.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest lie ever. We make all decisions emotionally first. Like, I have clients, for example, and I did this exercise with them. And I said, do you rationally, because I wanted to prove that we make decisions emotionally first. I said, do you rationally welcome $1 million in your bank account right now? And the client, well, hell yeah. Oh yeah. And they got so excited, and there was all that exuberance and laughter. And I went, great. Let's see. I said, let's pretend, imagine you're walking in the desert right now. There's nobody around you. You're by yourself. It's quiet. It's peaceful. All of a sudden, you find a black duffel bag. And as you open it, you find $1 million in unmarked bills. What feeling came up? Most people, it's anxiety, it's worry,
mm-hmm.
and that client was anxiety. The whole face dropped. And I said, that anxiety referenced a belief or memory. What was it? I saw it flash in your face. And she was like, mafia.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, in order for you to have $1 million in your bank account, it's either drug money or you're part of the mafia or something. And they went like, that makes no sense. That makes no rational sense. I said, no, because we all make decisions emotionally first. And then we use our dominant feeling to validate the beliefs and memories we have associated with that feeling about money. Then I asked that client, how do you feel when you pay the rent? Anxiety. How do you feel when you pay this or that? Anxiety. It was anxiety everywhere. I said, then what made you think it would be different when $1 million would be placed in front of you? And that same client, I saw them today. And we did another exercise because they're determined. They're like, I'm tired of feeling anxious about money. And I said, how much would you like to make? So they gave a number.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, would you feel comfortable saying how much you earn to your mother? And they went. To your father? And they went. They literally backed off emotionally and physically. And I said, then what makes you think you can earn that amount when you cannot own it emotionally first? In order to have, we must be. Then it became more homework around that. But we make decisions emotionally first, even when it comes to money.
Yeah. So how do you start? I guess, when you start an engagement with someone, where do you start with, how do you start it?
Well, the first thing is I ask is, how do you feel about money? That's step one. That's awareness.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel? And so how do you feel when you pay a bill? How do you feel when you pay a bill and you have the money? How do you feel when you pay a bill and you don't have the money? Is the feeling the same? Why not? Another exercise that I do is when was the last transaction that you had? Maybe you bought a coffee, maybe you bought a meal, maybe you bought gas, whatever it is. Maybe you fueled the car. And you will say, do you remember? And they go, yeah. Do you remember how you felt when money passed your hands? Either through a credit card, debit card, through cash. And many people would say, no, I didn't even pay attention to it because they're numb around money. They don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. Or they're the same people that when they buy their coffee, they will look at the barista, grab their coffee and not acknowledge a barista or not say thank you or not leave a big tip or all these things, they matter as to how we feel. That's the awareness part. When there's money in our hands, How do we treat ourselves? How do we feel towards it? It also dictates how we treat others and how much money we get to enjoy. So that's step one. And after they know that feeling, then step two becomes, why do you feel this way about money? And for many people will say, well, money makes me nervous, or money makes me this or that. No. There are no new feelings. You were taught to feel anxious about money. You were taught to worry about money. And the way I explain it to clients is, we have mirror neurons. Like, when we look in the mirror, and I see, when you look in the mirror and you look at yourself, I have blonde hair, and I wouldn't expect to see red hair, or I'm wearing a red top. I wouldn't expect to see a purple top. I would expect to see this.
Right.
But we all have mirror neurons. So therefore, as a child, we were like sponges. So we imitated everything we saw in front of us, including feelings. People think it's cute. For example, if Susie's mama twirls her hair when she's nervous, and then one day her 3-year-old starts twirling her hair, Susie's mama, if she's unaware, she might say, oh, that's so cute. Look at her. She's mimicking mommy. But me, now, looking at that, I would say, if you feel anxious when you twirl your hair, your daughter is anxious right now.
She learned that.
We learned that from us. So we learned our money behaviors, our feelings about money, from our parents, our caregivers, our teachers, our friends, our relatives, whoever had the most impact on us. And it's not because these people are not in front of us, or it's not because we said we would never be like them. If we said we'd never be like them, chances are we are like them, because we're not seeing it. The blind spots are on. So that's step two.
Okay, so now we have awareness. And then we can kind of trace from where it came from. Yep. And then what's next after that?
Then it becomes about implementing, generating a positive feeling towards money. So for many people, it's either we see abundance or we see the lack of it. Because we make decisions emotionally first, it has a frequency. So we have a frequency around money. So if we want more money, for example, if all we see is poverty, then our frequency of vibration is very low. So if we want to attract more, we must see more. So we must open up more. So we must start seeing the abundance around us. And it's not easy, because I grew up ghetto poor. So I know it's not easy.
Right.
Because there's that default that will say, well, I'm going to go and see the lack of it. But for me, it was as simple as I started with the basics, looking at a tree, looking at the leaves on the tree, and saying the tree is abundant. I am abundant. See, I say it and the goosebumps starts coming. The beach has a lot of sand. The beach is abundant. I am abundant. There are a lot of fish in the ocean. The ocean is abundant. I am abundant. And my voice drops and everything slows down and I feel it. And that alone does more to attract money, opportunities, and everything to us than pounding affirmations or pounding self-help books, because it doesn't matter. It's knowledge. And knowledge without application, in my opinion, is useless, because we make all decisions emotionally first.
So I guess that, even though it seems like it's such a small thing, will get someone, taking years of their emotions and their attachments and getting them on the right path to looking at money in a better light, and in that abundance versus that scarcity type of model.
Yes. I have people who say, how long is it going to take? How attached are you to your beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times is the money beliefs that we are, they're not true. We just took them as true. I was watching a video the other day, and it was fascinating. It was this guy, when we went to school and we saw 1 + 1, 2, 1 + 1. It was drilled into us, and this guy proved mathematically through algebra. It was very simple. He was proving people how 1 + 1 can equal any number you want, including 0. It's a belief. It's of everything. And unless we examine every belief we have, unless we stop ourselves, and that's the discipline. The discipline is learning so we can unlearn what we were taught, so we can learn new behaviors. So we must question everything about money. I always say, people, show me what's inside your wallet. I'll tell you who you are.
So, I mean, now we're looking at a person, and you're coaching a person.
Yeah.
How does it, when you add the complexity or dynamics, when there's a couple, when we're looking at two people? And you mentioned it earlier. You and your husband at the time fought about money, and I think that's two. I guess people fight about love and money are two of the things that people fight about. How can spouses, partners work better together with money when it comes down to their money?
When it comes to, like, for example, dating, I tell my clients within by the third date, you must bring up money. And they go, you must bring up money. And you pay for your meal yourself. They pay for theirs, you pay for yours. And that they're like, you must have that conversation. You must know what money means to them. As you ask them, because it's the beginning of the relationship, you ask them and you watch them. Most people squirm. They're squirming, they're uncomfortable, they're like, oh, and then why are you bringing this up? And everything that's going on in that moment, it shows you how they feel about money and why they feel that way. And people think that, love will conquer all and it's going to be all magnificent and we'll get through it when we get through it. But by the time you're deep in the relationship, it's quite painful, because then those red flags that were there at the beginning, they didn't go away. They just got magnified in the relationship. Yeah. And one of the things that I say to people who want to go in relationship is like, you attract exactly where you're at. And that makes people usually angry when I say that. And here's why. Because otherwise it's let's say, we're just going to make assumption. Let's say you're a 9 and you meet a 2. Would you date the 2? Most people go, no. Why not? Too much work. Okay. Do you think the 2 would date a 9? And they're like, yeah. But would they date? Would they date that 9? Would a 9 agree to that? Most likely not. So I said, now let's reverse. They're the 9, we're the 2. And it's the same thing. They go, well, no. Well, when it says the 2 dating the 9, they said, of course they will date. The 9 will date me because it's me. But I said, let's be realistic here. And they say, no, most likely not. So I said, but let's say a person is a 6, the other one's a 5. When it comes to like understanding of money, then it's within the same vibration, the same understanding. So even though you may fight with somebody about finances all the time, but that person has similar money beliefs as you. And you will say, that makes no sense. No, it makes sense, because even the 2 extremes of the same pole, it's a belief that holds both ends. It's like if you pick up this stick, you pick up both ends. So, but for a couple that's already in a relationship, they need to do the work separately, because they need to really understand what money means to them emotionally and why. So that the next time they're triggered about money, then they know it has nothing to do with the person in front of them. A trigger is always from something in the past. I'll give an example. I had this client who was loud chewing. Annoyed the crap out of that client. She was like, oh, it's just no. And I said, when did you hear the first time loud chewing? And they stopped and they were like, I was 9 years old. My father and my mother had split up. My mom started dating that guy. That guy was a loud chewer and he sat in my father's seat. Mm-hmm. So they spent 30-some years being angry at every loud chewer, even though they were angry at a situation that had nothing to do. And it's the same about money. If we're worried about money, if we're anxious about money, and if we're financially nagging people, if we are feeling responsible for everyone and everything around us financially, all of that comes from the past. It's not who we are. But we just choose to relive that history over and over because we haven't learned our lesson yet, or we've been deeply hurt. And instead of healing ourselves, we drag it on, a baggage, or we call a baggage, into the next relationship until we can heal it.
And how do you heal it? You know, if that's what needs to be done, how do you, I guess, get them to let go of that past attachment to it?
Well, they need to set their goals. For example, if they have different goals, if for one person, if they save money, they save every penny they have, like they're very frugal and they save and save and save, and the other one is usually the opposite, will be a spender.
Yeah,
you see it a lot in your field too, and the reason is because the saver wants to learn how to relax a bit more with money. And the one who's too relaxed with money wants to learn, but they're trying to learn from one another. And in relationship, you cannot coach your wife and you cannot coach your husband. You cannot. And because that makes toxic relationships. And I wish I had learned that 20, 30 years ago. Because there's always, if we coach somebody, then we think we know better. If we know better, somebody's on the pedestal, somebody's lower. There's no more equality in the relationship. So therefore, must do that work separate. You must know how you feel about money, why you feel that way, where your money beliefs come from. And once you know all of that, then you do your ultimate best not to bring your triggers, your money triggers, into the relationship. Because if you bring them in the relationship, it has nothing to do with the other person. We're the ones self-sabotaging in that moment. We're the one ruining the relationship. And I've had people say to me, well, I can't be with that person. Like, they just wrecked my credit card by so many thousands of dollars. I can't. They're ruining my credit, whatever it is. But they chose to be with that person to begin with. And we cannot change anybody. We can never change anyone. We change when we're ready because we make decisions emotionally. We change when we feel the need to change, never a moment before. So therefore it becomes, does it work for me or not? If it doesn't work, we can walk away. If it works, then we stay. But it's a choice. And for most people, they find it very, very tough to make those choices. They'd rather stay in a secure relationship than step up and be with someone who's more their caliber when it comes to understanding emotional maturity.
And I guess you said, you put money on the table, third date, it's better to find out earlier that.
It is better to find out earlier. Because when we're in love, the love chemicals, they last anywhere between 6 and 18 months. And so therefore, if we don't put those things which are important, money is crucial in a relationship. People can say, well, not about money. No, it's about money. Money permeates every area of our life. But yet people make it so taboo. because they were told never to bring up money at the dinner table, or we don't talk about money, or if you talk about money, it sounds like you're a gold digger, or that, like, there's all these beliefs around it. So people walk in a relationship blind. Like, I ask people, if you had a business opportunity, would you go into business half with somebody without checking them out?
Right.
They would go, no. Would you check, make sure they're financially sound? Would you do all your what you call due diligence? And people say yes. But when it comes to relationships, most people don't do their due diligence. I didn't, because I thought if I like somebody, it's enough. Until the shit hit the fan and we realized we had very vastly different beliefs. But by then, if you love somebody, it hurts much more than walking into a relationship with our eyes wide open. That's the emotional maturity. Because it comes down to, does it work for me or not? And many people, they must check money. It's like one of those boxes that you check. You must make sure you have the same beliefs around money. Otherwise, is it worth spending 10, 20, 30 years fighting with somebody over money? And like I say, many of my clients, like, yeah, you may, prospects or something, you may not want to do the work around money, but that divorce is going to cost you more than hiring an advisor, a consultant, or a coach. And that's where they go very quiet.
And do you see it being fixable? So you have a couple that is having trouble with money. Maybe they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, like you said. Maybe one's a spender, one's a saver. Can they meet in the middle? Can you help them get to some point where they're able to move forward with it?
They can. Yes, they can. But it depends on what the relationship means to them emotionally. So are they willing to do the work, what we call the inner work? And each of them working on their own triggers, understanding like all their money beliefs and what it stands for and what they want money for. Somebody might want money to buy a house, as if somebody doesn't want to buy a big house. They're very happy renting for the rest of their life. Well, that's a divergence of belief that has to be somehow reconciled. And thinking we can convince, if I were to give like one tip, never believe you can convince anyone else. We can't. We can't. Because we can never tell somebody how to feel. And we never truly know how somebody else feels. So in relationship, who wants to empower one another, when they feel the trigger coming, the money trigger, like that familiar money fight coming one more time, you stop. You both stop, not a word. Take a deep breath. And one says to the other, I can see you are triggered. What are you triggered about? Exactly. Ask to be precise. Because a trigger is specific. And you can ask questions, like open-ended question. Where do you believe it comes from? What makes you feel? Without judgment. What do you need right now? So you're feeling anxious about the situation. What do you need right now? Oftentimes it was, well, I need you to stop nagging me, or I need you. That's not the answer. What do you need? Because what we need often is we need to drink a glass of water. We need to take a walk. We need to journal. It has nothing to do with the other person, our needs. And from that place, and we can say, okay, we will reconvene in 24 hours. We'll talk about this one more time. And you come back at it as often as necessary until you get a clear understanding, not of your position, of the other person's position, intellectually and emotionally. So basically it's coming from that place of empathy, feeling what they feel, and looking at their world, their beliefs around money through their own lenses. And that will do more for a relationship. Why? Because the partner will feel seen, they will feel heard, they will feel understood, and they will start opening up. And then there's a chance at healing whatever was that money trigger. But it's
Right.
work. Relationships are work.
So instead of trying to just push your position, better to understand your
You can never convince somebody else. I mean, we both know this. You're smiling. Anyone who tries to convince us, we tend to just dig our heels, and it becomes a head thing instead of a heart thing. We need to get. That's why my company is called like the Heart of Money Matters, because it's not only the heart of money, like money matters, but the heart, the person with the money beliefs, they matter. And if we want to understand somebody and heal a money situation, we must address how that person or how we feel about money and why we feel that way, so that we know which action to take. That's the empowerment piece. Otherwise, we just keep repeating the past, and that leads nowhere. It's like a cat chasing its tail. I'm sure you've seen it in your field of work.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it's either, if that happens, it's just at one point, someone just gets tired and fed up and decides it's not worth it.
Yeah. And they jeopardize a whole relationship instead of looking within. And like me in the past, I did the same thing. I thought, well, it's not worth it. I'll just move on. Next person.
Yeah.
But you, everybody, we are the common denominator with every experience that we have. The way we feel about money. See, one of the biggest, you could say, lies that I had told myself was that I could behave around money differently around my husband, my kids, my parents. No. Between your life partner and yourself, the common denominator is you. Between you and your children, it's you. You and your coworkers, it's you. I said, it's like a computer. The computer makes no difference who sits in front of it. It will behave the same way. So we behave the same way around money, no matter where we are. And when we start paying attention to every money transaction we make, how we feel about money, we start getting a very good feel of our money beliefs and where they come from and where the emotional blockages might be.
No, I mean, you don't, I guess, realize how much it's, this stuff is ingrained. Your beliefs, your behavior is ingrained in you, and changing it's not easy, but it's something that can be worked on.
Well, what's the alternative?
Right.
Like when I tell people, what's the alternative? You keep going through life proving the world that money is hard to earn, that money doesn't grow on trees. I mean, money doesn't grow on trees, like where that expression came from. When we understand the fractional banking system, there's plenty of money. Money is a concept. It's an illusion. I mean, you take $10, you deposit it in the bank. The federal bank, you reserve the right to take $9 out of your bank account while $10 sits in it. They can take $9 out of your bank account and lend it to others while your $10 sits in your bank account. So how real is that money? It's not real. We think it's real because we associate heavy feelings to it. But money itself, was never the problem. There's plenty of money. But whether we see it as abundance or lack, it's a feeling.
Right.
It always comes back to feeling.
Feeling.
Heal the feeling, you're golden.
You'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I mentioned in the intro that you've written 29 books. Was it just you wrote one and all of a sudden you just said, I'm going to crank out 28 more? Or how did you get started in writing?
Oh, like pretty much everything else. My mentor said to me, he said, you ever written a book? When I answered, I don't write. I'm no writer. And I had no idea. I had never written an article. I had never written a book. I had never done any of that. But see, I had a belief that I was no writer. And it came from my grade 2 teacher, who told me that I could not have written what I wrote because it was too good. And it impacted me for decades. So we went to work. Now that I knew where the belief came from, how I felt about it, I started writing. And then the first book came out. And then they started coming in one after the other, like an assembly line. And it was just this like, wow. I would get this idea and I would write and write and write. And they came like that, churning like one after the other. People ask me, like, in flow, I can write like 1,100 words an hour.
Wow.
in flow.
Yeah.
But I love writing. See, I've managed to switch that belief. And for me, it's about sharing. It's like we all have wisdom. We all need to share it. We all have those abilities. It's whether we choose to develop them or not. We're all creative. We're all powerful. I truly believe that.
Yep. All right. So we're just about out of time. Anne, thank you so much for being on the show today. How best can someone find out more info about you or get in touch with you if they'd like to?
You can find me on my website, financialeq.coach. I am also on LinkedIn, all social media, Instagram and that. But on the website, I have a webinar coming up. You can sign up for it. It's on debunking all those money myths, money beliefs. I have an online course coming up, and also a whole strategic planning and financial EQ implementation for entrepreneurs, because most of my clients are entrepreneurs who they're pivoting, but they're realizing, like, as we become more and more aware as a society, they're realizing that their money beliefs is actually what's preventing them from going from 5 to 6 figures or 6 to 7 figures.
Right.
So they're going to the root of the problem. Which is the right way to go.
Yeah. Great. We'll link to all that in the show notes. And again, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure being here.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to today's episode. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.